Thank you. So let's talk about again Bluetooth. Maybe some of you know that I'm used to this protocol. So who am I? I'm a security evangelist at Digital Security, which is a French IT security company focused on IoT, and I'm also a senior security researcher and the main developer of BTLE Jack, which is basically a BLE Swiss Army knife. So we are going to talk about BLE5. So BLE5 is a new version of this Bluetooth Low Energy protocol. The Bluetooth Low Energy protocol has been designed and introduced in 2010 as Bluetooth Smart as part of the Bluetooth core specifications version 4.0, and it has evolved since then. Version 4.1 has been released in 2013, version 4.2 in 2014, version 5 in 2016, and 5.1 in this year. So this is a protocol that evolves very quickly, and it's quite interesting. This protocol includes a lot of security features and security mechanisms. The first one is the pairing. This is a process that allows any device to exchange a key with a PIN code out-of-band data, or in the latest version, 4.2, with the ECDH protocol. There are some vulnerabilities in this pairing mechanism. But this protocol also provides a secure connection. So this is a built-in feature you can use to protect the data exchange between two devices. So this is quite interesting because it's encrypted and authenticated. So basically nobody normally can tap into a communication or inject packets in an existing communication. The last security mechanism, well, in fact, it's not really a security mechanism. It's something that has been introduced in BLE to improve what's called the coexistence. That means, as many of you may know, the 2.4 gigahertz bandwidth or frequencies are are not used by a lot of devices and protocols. So it's sometimes difficult to make many devices coexist at the same time on this 2.4 gigahertz. Frequencies. So this channel selection algorithm is basically some kind of not a security mechanism, but a feature that has been introduced in BLE to perform some channel hopping that makes sniffing complicated. So basically it has been introduced in this protocol to make it more reliable. But in fact, from a security perspective, it's also more difficult to tap into an existing connection, for instance. This BLE protocol has been pretty much attacked these last years. The first attack that is very easy to perform is sniffing. That means if an attacker is around a device, a pair of devices, then he can sniff an existing connection if it's not encrypted, of course. And by sniffing this connection, he can grab secrets and data. Until very recently, this sniffing mechanism or sniffing attack was only possible with some very specific tools, and it didn't work on BLE5. But some guy at NCC Group released a few months ago a new tool called Sniffle. And Sniffle is able to do this on BLE5. But the fact is that this tool, Sniffle, can only sniff new connections. Because with this protocol, when you create a connection between a device and another device, there is a specific packet sent, and this Sniffle tool is able to capture this packet and follow the connection, even if the communication with BLE jumps from one channel to another. Jamming, this is something I introduced last year at BruCON. Jamming an existing BLE connection, it's possible. If you are synchronized with an existing connection, you can just inject packets by exploiting or abusing a very specific feature called the supervision timeout. So I won't go into the details of this jamming attack, but it's something that is feasible, and it works on a lot of devices for BLE 4 versions of this protocol. Hijacking, it's quite the same. We are going to jam a device, and then we can take a complete control of this existing connection. So basically, we just disconnect the master connected to the slave device, and we take its place to keep the connection open. And then we can do whatever we want with the slave device. So these three attacks are pretty well known, and it works only on the BD 4.0 to 4.2 version of this protocol, except for the sniffing, which is now possible with BD 5. But what about jamming and hijacking? When you are performing this sniffing or jamming attacks or hijacking attacks, you got a lot to do. You need some specific hardware. You can buy a lot of hardware, but the most used in this process are the following. The first one on your left, the Ubertooth. So this Ubertooth is a specific hardware with an SDR that is able to capture packets and process BLE connections. The tool in the middle is the BBC microbit device, which has been sponsored by the BBC in order to teach English students or UK students how to code. But this microbit includes a very specific chip, a system on chip created by Nordic Semiconductor, which is capable of communicating with BLE. So this is something you can just abuse in order to capture packets and inject packets as well. And the last one on your right is the TI CC Thompson development board that is used with sniffer to capture and sniff basically BD5 packets and BD4 packets as well. So if you get one of these, you can perform attacks on BLE connections. BTLE Jack, this is a software I developed, only works with microbit. And this Nordic Semiconductor NRF 51822, which is basically limited, because it has been designed for BLE4 only. So as we will see later, this is somehow some kind of issue we will run into with BLE5. BLE5 introduces a lot of new features too. So a better throughput, that means you can send data faster than with BLE4. A better range, you can send data further with some specific features up to 800 feet or 240 meters away. So normally a BLE4 connection is working up to maybe between 20 and 40 meters for a connection. So depending on the on the noise. So this is an improvement of this protocol, and it's also improved the coexistence. So that means basically with BLE4, when you get during a conference for like this one, when you get a lot of people with BLE-enabled devices, then you may lose your connection or existing connection, or you may experience some trouble connecting to a device because there are too many devices in the room, and these devices are interfering with each other. So this is sometimes very difficult. With this improved coexistence, it's easier to keep a connection alive because they improved this frequency or channel hopping mechanism. The better throughput is possible thanks to two new PHYs. So a PHY is a physical communication layer used in radio. So these two new PHYs, the first one is a 2 megabit per second, 2 megabit per second encoded PHY, which doubles the speed of BLE. So if you are used to BLE4, you know that sending data takes some time, and with this new version of BLE5 and this new PHY, you can send data you can send data faster. So another PHY has been introduced, the LE coded PHY, which is a bit messy. If we're going to have a look at the packet, the slide after, but in fact it increased the range. So you can send packet further, but the drawback here is that you cannot send packet further with high speed. You need to downgrade the speed to be able to send packet further. So there are two possibilities here. The first one is to have a range multiplied by 4, so the up to 240 meters. But you have to send data at a bit rate of 125 kilobits per second. You can send data up to 100 meters and so, but you can send this data at 500 kilobits per second. So this is faster, but you cannot go cannot go further with this version of file. If you have a look at the packets, the first one at the top is the coded file, so it's much more complicated. And of course, when you are dealing with packets from the air, it's difficult to capture this packet. The packet at the bottom of this style is the legacy BLE4 packet, and it's much simpler. If you have a look at this packet, you will see that they both use a preamble, which is in fact a succession of zeros and ones, an access address. The access address is a 32-bit value that identifies a link between two devices. So this is something advertised by both devices when a connection is created. And we got the PDU. PDU is basically the payload, the data you are going to send from one device to another. And there is also a CRC, a checksum, that is just to check if the connection is reliable. If you get some bit flipped or something like this, you can detect it with this checksum. The improved coexistence. This is the key point in my talk. Normally, when you are creating a connection with BLE4, you are using what's called now the channel selection algorithm number 1, which is the legacy one. This channel selection algorithm basically uses some kind of counter to compute dynamically the channel number you are going to use for the next hop. So we are going from one channel to another with this mathematical sequence. So this is very basic. You get the previous channel, you add some value called hop increment. So this is a value set up by the master who creates the connection. And then you compute the mode 37 and you get the channel index you are going to use for the next channel. So since it's pretty basic, this explains also why in the very crowded area there are a lot of collisions on this of packets. So they decided to implement a new channel selection algorithm based on a PRNG, a pseudo-random number generator. And this channel selection algorithm is more random. And in fact, this statistically improve the coexistence of devices. If you have a look at the packets sent by the devices that advertise, and this is the case of most of the BLE devices, there is a bit that has been added to the header. They call the CH cell bit. And if this bit equals 1, then your device supports this new channel selection algorithm. So you can tell when a device advertises if this device supports this new channel selection algorithm or if it does not. So this is quite interesting. So just to sum it up, what are the consequences regarding existing attacks? So we got a new channel selection algorithm that changes drastically the way a device hops from one channel to another. So basically, we got with this new channel selection algorithm a sequence of 65,536 different channels rather than 37 for the previous version. So sniffing new connection is still possible. If you capture the connection request sent to create the connection, to initiate the connection, then you get everything you need to start following an existing connection, because obviously the master sends everything required, every parameters that are required to follow the connection for the slave. So if you are here or around the devices when the connection is created, then you can get everything you need to follow the connection. So this is what Sniffle does. But we won't be able to jam or hijack BLE5 devices because previous attacks, such as jamming and hijacking, are based on the previous channel selection algorithm. So the main question is, are BLE attacks dead? Is it possible nowadays, or in the future years, to jam or hijack BLE devices? Well, the short answer is maybe yes. When I had a look at the specifications, I stumbled upon the BLE5 PRNG, this pseudo-random number generator. And it looks very nice, you know. First of all, it uses what is called in the specifications a channel identifier. And this channel identifier is used as a seed of this PRNG. So this is quite interesting. This PRNG has been designed to be very easy to implement because, you know, you got to implement this in very tiny devices with a small computation power. So this is something you need to keep it simple, in fact. So it's based on additions, multiplications, XOR, bit permutations. So this is something very easy to implement. And of course, there is also channel remapping, because, you know, if your channel is very crowded, then you can decide to not to use this channel and keep the other working. This is a very specific feature of the BLE protocol. I won't cover this in this talk, but this is something you have to keep in mind. This channel identifier, when you go through the specs, is just a simple calculation based on the access address. The access address is a 32-bit value sent after the preamble. So this is something that is broadcasted. This is public. And this is very interesting because this value, then this channel identifier, is used in combination with this MAM routine. MAM stands for multiply, add, mod, which is basically the 3 steps of this routine. But of course, they don't use it only once. The process is a bit more complex, you know. So you got in input on the left a counter, which is basically the number of channels you have jumped at a given time. The channel identifier, which is the access address, XOR, I didn't specify. To be more specific, the value of the channel identifier is just bit 0 to 15, XOR bit 16 to 31. So this is very easy to compute. So it's based on the first step is XOR, then a bit permutation, then first MAM, bit permutation, second MAM, third permutation, third MAM, XOR, and you get your random number, or what is supposed to be a random number. And this is using the channel selection algorithm number 2. So this is basically a process to compute the next channel that we are going to hop to in order to keep the connection alive. So the first input is a counter. The second input is a channel identifier. Then we get this random number generation routine. Then we get at the output a random number, and we compute the next channel. So yeah, well, so this was a bit like, that looks interesting, you know. And I wasn't alone. When I performed this research, I saw that Matthew Green, which is a well-known cryptographer, also spotted this exact algorithm in the specs. So yeah, I thought I got something. And of course, you all know that the first rule in cryptography, including PRNG designs, is don't roll your own. You don't create your own PRNG. You don't create your own encryption algorithm. So creating this specific PRNG, well, sounds bad. And I see also some flaws here. The first one is that the channel identifier is public, as I said previously. So this is a public value, a 16-bit value you can compute based from the access address. So we know this. We are going to hijack or jam a connection. We need this access address value, so we know the channel identifier. Next value provided as an input in this RNG is a counter. Normally, when you implement this kind of PRNG system, you are trying to use some internal states. This is a specific buffer hidden from the outside. And this buffer evolves from time, and then it produces a random value. So if you want to break this PRNG, you need to guess the internal state. But here, it's a counter. It's something that is incremented. So this is something that we can guess. And in fact, is it really a PRNG? If you have a look at the function, this is something, a black box function that takes a known value at the counter to generate 65,536 different values for a given channel identifier. So this is something, well, channel identifier is constant, and this sequence is fixed. So basically, if you get, if you look at this with an attacker perspective, this is something that can be broken because you are going to loop on all of these 65,000 values. If you manage to know maybe where you are in the sequence, then it's done. So, as an attacker, I consider that channel identifier is known, since it's based on access address. We are left with a 16-bit value, which is a counter. So what can we do with that? If we can figure out where the connection is in this sequence of 65,000-ish values, then at a specific time, then we can synchronize with the connection and then sniff, jam, and die. So this is quite interesting to break this PRNG. So, how to do this? We are going to guess the counter, the value of the counter. So, as an attacker, we are external. We don't have access to this counter value, so we have to guess it. And the only way we can get information from an existing connection is to listen on a specific channel and wait for a packet to be received. So I can only tell at which time I get a packet on the channel. And of course, if I measure the time spent, well, the time between two packets on two different channels, I can measure the time spent between these two packets. So this is two information I can get and I can use to break this PRNG. The prerequisite for this is to know what is called the hop interval. The hop interval is basically the time spent by a device on a channel. So let's consider that we know this value for this attack. So our goal is to try to recover the counter value at a given time. So I started to think about an attack, and I'm quite sure you all know about the Eratosthenes sieves used to compute prime numbers. You get this matrix, you cross every numbers, and you eliminate each candidate, and the only candidates that left are prime numbers. So this is quite the same. Here is the attack to guess this counter used by your connection. So first, at the very beginning, we consider the counter as a value of 0. We don't know the value, so just pick a random value. So we compute the channel corresponding to this counter. We know the channel identifier, we know the counter, we use the same computations with this RNG routine, and then we get the channel. So we are waiting for a packet on this channel. Once we got the packet, we compute the next channel based on the counter with the value 1, and we also wait for a packet. If the counter at T0 was 0, then we would have spent between the two packets only one hop interval. So we measure the time and we divide this by the hop interval value. If n is greater than 1, that means my candidate is not the counter value. So this is quite easy to just eliminate this candidate and keep the others. And we go like this in the sequence we are previously generated. So we are going to look for channels in the sequence with a gap of n hops. And based on this, we are only going to keep the indexes that are basically the value of the counter used to generate these channels. So by doing this, we are going to eliminate every candidate that could not have been used to generate this pattern. And we are going to loop. By doing this, with a few loops, we can do it again, and after this, we will be left with a single candidate. And this candidate is the channel, the counter, the value of the counter, when we started the attack at T0. So normally I get a video for this. So I developed everything in Python. At the time I started this research, I didn't have any BLE5 device. And I suppose that these devices cost a lot. So I started just emulating the protocol in order to determine if my attack is working or not. So here is the script. So this is a simulation of this channel selection algorithm number 2. And I'm simulating the whole process, all the channel hops and so on. You can see that we can get some candidates. Here, after 2 rounds, we got only 21 candidates left. And we go through the process until we got a single candidate. And the remaining candidate is the 30,600. While the initial value I set it up in this experiment was randomly generated on 30,600. So this approach, this attack works to get the value of the counter. So yeah, I like when the plans come together. But anyway. So once we get the counter, that's good. We got something very interesting, but we need to know the hop interval value, because all of this is based on the assumption we know this value, and this is something much more difficult to get. This hop interval value can be computed based on time differences. We can sit on a channel, wait for a packet, do the same on another channel, and of course, you are going to capture various packets with different hops. First one, let's say, will be 5 hops. The second one, 2 hops, and so on. So the time span between these hops is obviously a multiple of the hop interval. So if we use the GCD just to compute the greatest common denominator, then we can get mathematically this value. So if you get enough measures, then you can deduce this hop interval. So again, I simulated this system. So it gave me, as you can see, after the 5 measures or 6 measures, something very reliable. And I performed a lot of tests to see if for every possible values of channel identifiers and counters, if this is reliable. And as you can see, if you only takes 5 measures, you get a 95% of success rate. So this is pretty good. If you want to have 100% of success, you need to make 10 measures. So it takes some time to do these measures, but in fact it works. And the maximum time required here is 178 seconds. So this is a few minutes to recover this value. It can be difficult when you are attacking a live device. You have to follow people. You have to tell people just to keep in range of the devices. So this is sometimes difficult to do. Anyway. So based on this, we got the counter recovery mechanism designed here as my attack, and also the hop interval. So once I implemented everything in Python, everything was theoretically working. So next step is to go in real life. Let's go into implementing some attacks, these attacks, on a real device. So I started looking on Amazon, looking for BLE5 enabled devices. I found a lot of them, but in fact they are not BLE5 compatible. This is just some Chinese random crops putting a lot of BLE5 mentions in the description just to attract people and make sales. Anyway, so I got no luck. And to be honest, at this time, there is no real BLE5 compatible device. Every BLE devices that I found only rely on BLE 4.2 or 4.1, depending on the devices. So that means basically I had no target device. Yeah, so how to deal with that? Well, Nordic Semiconductor created a lot of dev kits, development boards that you can buy, and it's used to test your setup with a BLE5 device. So I got the firmware from the SDK. I compiled this firmware. I put this firmware on 2 dev boards. One is the slave device, the other master device, and it uses the channel selection algorithm number 2. So this is something that it's quite interesting because we are going to test this attack. And of course, I started to improve BTLE jack, because I'm used to it. I know how to develop this firmware. So this is easier for me to implement this. So I modified BTLE jack to compute the hop interval mapping, hop interval value while mapping channels, and also this GCD-based technique to recover this value. I started my attack, and as you can see at the bottom of the screen, I got the hop interval value. So this GCD computation works pretty well. So that's great. Yeah, first step done. We got the hop interval value. Next step, we are going to implement our sieve attack. We are going to eliminate every possible candidate in order to intercept the communication. So I started implementing this attack, and the first one went pretty well. I went from 65,000 possible candidates to only 250 candidates. So the first pass, that's pretty good. Second pass, everything messed up. 0 candidate theft. Why? I got to look at my code, because I'm used to develop late at night. I did the same this night with the badge. But sometimes when you code very late at night, you do some mistakes. And after a few hours of debugging, it looked like my code took some time to compute something and then get desynchronized from the connection we are looking for. So I was a bit sad at this moment. So, but I'm stubborn. So I wanted to get it working. To solve this problem, I moved from a sieve approach, which is basically you're doing a lot of runs with, eliminating a lot of candidates, to a pattern matching algorithm. So we are going to do first a lot of measures, which won't desynchronize our microbit, or device. And then, based on these measures, we are going to deduce the value of the counter. So if you take 10 measures, then you can deduce this counter and get the value you are waiting for. And it worked. Yeah, I was a bit relieved, But so first step, we got the hop interval. Next step, we got the counter value. Yeah, so normally everything goes, as planned. But then came the synchronize step. That means once you get this value, you are going to sit on a specific channel and wait for a packet in order to start following the existing connection. You have to synchronize with the connection in order to jump from one channel to another, the same way that the devices do. So this synchronization step failed every time. I ran my attack, it failed. And I had to look at my code again, created late at night. And there is a big loop. If you look at this, we loop over the 65,000-ish candidates. But on this tiny system on chip, it takes some time to do so. And by doing this, when I exited the loop, I was late. And I was 13 hops late. So that means when I started to detect a packet and synchronize, then the real device was 13 hops ahead. So no way I could synchronize with this connection. So I fixed this drift in the firmware. I'm looking just 30 hops ahead, and I get the connection. I get the packet at the exact time I was waiting for it. And it worked. So let's see what happens with this. So I'm going to capture a connection. In order to speed up the video, I specify the channel map and so on. So So if you are wondering what are the parameters in the command line. So we are going to recover the internal counter, which is the PRNG counter. So as you can see, it can take some seconds to get this value. Yeah. This is the fun part of the demo, when you are using video. I didn't edit this video to make it faster, but in fact it will be recovered very soon. Come on. Oh, 10 seconds left. That would be pretty. Yeah. So we get our counter, and then we are synchronized and capturing data with this channel selection algorithm number 2. So that's pretty cool. We got this working. What about jamming? So now that we are synchronized with the device, we're going to mess with it. And in order to mess with it, we need to be able to send packets. So I implemented the jamming with the system. As you can see, the connection lost. But in fact, I also got a video. It's maybe the worst demo in video I made, I have to admit, because there are no BLE5 devices out there. So this is a dev board with a LED. I'm going to show you and explain to you what happens. But in fact, don't expect a very amazing demo, like me pointing some sex toy or something like this, okay? Just, I want to prepare you to this, to this demo. So I implemented the jamming process, jamming attack on this dev board. So here at the bottom right-hand corner, you get the video feed of the board with some LEDs. So normally, I'm already connected with my master device to this dev board. And when the board gets disconnected, LED flips, LED goes off, another goes on. That tells the developer that the connection has been lost, and it awaits a new connection. But the master also detects this disconnection and create a new connection. So we're going to see that. So by doing this, we use the same attack tool. We get the internal counter again with this technique I created. So normally we would get the value of this. Again, some time. Sorry for that. Yeah, demos. Don't expect a live demo with this setup. It's impossible to do it at a conf. So we are synchronized. Let's go jamming. Look at the LEDs. Yep, LED flips. And then normally it gets a new connection, so just, I told you this was not amazing at all. But in fact, this attack works. This jamming attack works. The hijacking attack normally works, but I got an issue with the dev board. That means the firmware is somehow very touchy. When you're going to jam, it detects very quickly that the connection is lost. And this is not good for hijacking because we expect the device to have some kind of timeout we can exploit. We need some time to disconnect the master, detect that the connection has been cut, and then takes over the connections. And this is a problem here. But in fact, hijacking would work exactly the same. But I need real devices to show people that it's possible to hijack with BLE5. Anyway. So I released the version 2.0 of BTL Jack. So for those of you who are interested in giving a shot at this BLE5 jammer and hijacker, this is possible to do so. If you install this tool with PIP, it won't work because the PIP has only the 1.3 version 1.3 of this tool. You got to clone the repository and then install it yourself. Why I did that because it's still experimental. I need to test it more thoroughly, with a lot of devices in order to claim that my tool is working with BLE5 compatible devices. So if you want to give it a shot, test with BLE5 devices you may own or you may develop, then use this version 2.0 available on GitHub. So a few words to conclude this presentation. Bluetooth Low Energy version 5, and especially its PRNG, this PRNG is weak. And as a security analyst, this is somehow something we can, we can say, we can prove. But in fact, this is not really a PRNG, and if you look at it, obviously there are some flaws that can be exploited to be able to sniff a jam or hijack, such as the channel identifier and the counter, which is basically something you can recover by monitoring an existing connection. But just to make everything more in context with the Bluetooth SIG, the working group that created this version of the protocol, then this PRNG has just been introduced to improve coexistence. That means they don't expect, the guys who created this protocol, they don't expect some kind of security improvement from this. What are they were expecting to improve the coexistence. That means to be able to put a lot of devices in the same room, and unlike the BLE4 version of this protocol, to be able to make them communicate without any issues. So in fact, this is not really a security mechanism or security features that has been introduced in BLE5. It's just something to make everybody's lives easier with BLE. And it has also been designed to be easy to implement on very tiny devices and very low power CPUs or MCUs. So basically, they are doing the right thing. But in fact, don't expect this PRNG to block security people from tapping into devices. And this is for developers. This is my words for the BLE developers out there. And I don't know if there are any, but anyway. If you are using BLE5 or BLE4 or something like this, use the security features. It's provided by the protocol itself, and as we can see, as we saw during the last years, maybe 90% of the devices are still using unprotected and unsecure BLE connections. So that's the way that's why the jamming and hijacking attacks work, because if you don't use this secure connection, then anybody can tap into your connection, sniff your data, and jam your devices and hijack your devices very easily. For the future of this research, it could be interesting to use a new version of Nordic semiconductor system and chips, which is basically the NRF 52840 that provides everything required for the two new files. There are still a lot of work to port BetaJack to this platform because it's quite similar, because it's the same vendor. But in fact, you get to refactor the code and modify a lot of stuff. But luckily, Marcus Mengs, I don't know if you guys have heard about this guy, Marcus Mengs. Is the one who found a lot of vulnerabilities in Logitech's unifying dongles and devices such as mice and keyboards. And this guy also has already developed some kind of firmware to perform these attacks on this new NRF 52840 chip. So this is something I can maybe use to improve BTJack and make it more reliable for BLE5 and BLE4 connections. So thanks, Marcus, if you're watching this video maybe. Anyway, so this is something I'm going to do in the future if I have time to do so, in order to make this tool more reliable. I also put all my research materials, such as the scripts you saw in the videos. If you want to have a look at it, if you want to try it, to test it, or to experiment with this BLE5 new channel selection algorithm, it's available also on GitHub. I also developed some kind of die-hard tests just to try to evaluate the PRNG, PRNG robustness, but it's weak, so it failed mostly all the tests. Anyway, so thank you for having me at BruCON. If you have any questions, I don't know, if you get the mic or maybe we'll do it outside, I don't know. Glory? Nope.
All right.
That's great. Thank you very much.